What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we are working on a 2021 Volkswagen Atlas. Today on the Atlas, we are going to be covering how to replace your water pump. This is a 6-cylinder equipped Atlas, and these are a pretty common issue for those of you that either own one of these or live on the forums. You'll notice that a lot of people have early failures with these, and I don't really know what the reason for that is. They do have a funky design with a vacuum line going to them. Maybe there allows for some sensitivity there and early failure, but nonetheless, this should be a pretty straightforward job today, and we're going to show you how to replace those. Our car has about 54,000 miles on it. There's nothing wrong with it just yet, but we have seen these fail as early as 30 to 40,000 miles. Not to say that yours may not last longer than that. So it's something you should keep an eye on, especially if you're losing coolant. Take a look at the side of your engine. If you see any coolant running down the side of the block, the passenger side, then more than likely you have a bad water pump. While we're doing the pump, we're also going to throw in a new serpentine belt from our friends over at Continental, since we're going to be removing it anyways. Our kit also includes some hardware for the engine mount, which we're going to be undoing, as well as some water pump bolts and some water pump pulley bolts. Now, the genuine pump does come with the pulley bolted on and some bolts as well. We're going to see if we can try to work it onto the car using the existing holes on the pulley. If not, we'll take the pulley off and show you how to do that as well. Coolant is also included in the kit. The only thing that is not included that you're going to need to source separately is some distilled water to mix with your concentrate. But before we get started on all of that good stuff, let's take a look at some of the tools that are going to be needed to make this all happen. For this DIY, we're going to be using our vacuum fill tool. For the cooling system, it's the best and easiest way to fill up these modern cooling systems on most modern European cars. We have a 1/2-inch drive torque wrench, a 3/8 drive torque wrench, a 3/8 drive ratchet, a 12-inch extension, a 16mm wrench. We have some pliers for our constant pressure hose clamps that most Volkswagens have, a little bit of torque seal, a small piece of Scotch-Brite. As far as sockets go, we have an 18, a 17, a 16, a 13. As far as specialty sockets go, we have a 6mm hex, a T45, we have a T25, and an M6 triple square. That's going to be for the water pump bolts. Helping with the water pump and included in the water pump kit is going to be the CTA counterhole tool. This is going to help us with the pulley. We have a nice piece of wood for the bottom of the engine when we support it, some brake clean to clean up our area, some electric tools to speed up the removal and install of some of our hardware, and not pictured but needed is going to be some towels and a catch pan for the coolant. Now with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, the first step in draining the coolant is going to be to break the vacuum. We're just going to remove the coolant cap here at the reservoir. Obviously, the goal whenever you're doing any cooling system work is to make sure that the engine's stone cold. That way you don't hurt the engine or burn yourself. With the cap off to the side, now we're going to climb underneath the Atlas, get our belly pan out of the way so we can access the lower radiator hose to drain out some coolant. We have 3 T45s and 10 T25s to get the splash shield off. That's going to give us room into the underside of the car. It'll also help from getting coolant all over the tray while we're working later on. Now we'll set this to the side and then we'll look for our lower radiator hose. Now we're going to undo the clamp here at the lower radiator hose. You can undo them here at this union in the center, but these clamps are a little bit more annoying to deal with. I think this will work for us just fine. Some regular pliers will work. We have the constant pressure clamps pliers here. I'm going to be using the plier set for these special clamps. Just makes it a little bit easier to work with, but you can get to this with some regular pliers. You can see coolant's already ready to come out. So I'm going to pull this down as carefully as possible without trying to take a bath, and then we'll let it drain. All right, with the coolant mostly drained, that's not to say there's still going to be some in the system, in the block, so be mindful as you continue working. This will be a nice head start. We're going to put our coolant hose back on so that we don't forget about it later when we're done working. All right, with that all rebuttoned up, we can continue on with our DIY. We have 5 17mm lug bolts to remove. If your car is still equipped with the beauty caps, you can use the equipped tool that's usually in the car or a small pick and pop those out. That's going to give you access to the lug bolts, which we're going to zap out. Just be mindful when you get to the last one, the wheel may want to drop, so just brace it before you remove it fully. With the wheel off, that's going to give us access to the fender liner, which we're going to remove. That's going to give us just a little bit more working room here underneath the frame rail. So with that, let's grab our T25 and get to town. We have a total of about 18 T25s starting from the front, some underneath here, working our way around, back to 3 or 4 on the inside, and then 1 or 2 more under here. So just be sure you take your time, make sure you get all of them, and we'll pop this baby out. All right, with the fender liner out, I think I'm genuinely gonna keep that off for the rest of the video, because once I'm done, I think I'm gonna pull the car out, do the other side, and just power wash the wheel well. So 18 T25s, my good people. If we don't put them back on together, I have faith that you can do it on your own. Nonetheless, we're gonna lower the car down a bit. You can either work from underneath or above, depending on your work situation, to get to the belt tensioner, but that's what we're gonna do next. So I think we're gonna tackle it from the top side and get that serpentine belt off. If you haven't done so already, and this is your first time on the car, make sure to take a picture of the routing before you take it apart. So because we're still underneath the car, we have actually a really good view of the belt tensioner right up top. So we're just gonna go in with our 16mm wrench and release the tension on the belt so that we can slide it off one of the pulleys down here below. So we're gonna go towards the front of the car from underneath, slide that off this lower roller. And now we can take a closer look at this 54,000 mile belt. I don't suspect it to be bad. The car's still fairly new, it's only a 21, but there is some kind of strange coloring in some of the hoses here. There's a little bit of oxidation on the block, which makes me wonder actually, if we look at the bottom of the water pump there is a little bit of crustiness. So either this one has leaked before or it was leaking and stopped just from coolant building up, but kind of interesting. Also, quite a bit of oil here, probably from the front crank seal if I had to guess, because it's dry up top. But anyways, old belt is off. Again, we're going to put a new Continental belt, but at 54,000 miles, this one's still in fine shape. Again, just has that weird kind of stain that everything else here does. But all right, with that off, we're going to work on getting the engine down towards us. So this is where I'm going to stop for a hot second and just kind of talk through what we're going to do. For those of you working at home, more than likely you're going to be on jack stands with a free floor jack. At least that's the goal. A nice piece of wood underneath the block with a floor jack is going to be all you're going to need to support the engine when you go to undo the engine mounts. Because we're working on the lift, it's going to be a little funky for us. We're going to go up and down, but we're going to use a screw jack instead to simulate the same thing. That way we can film from the side and give you the best view versus being on the ground all crunched up together. So again, a nice piece of flat wood on a floor jack somewhere alongside under here. It's going to be all you need. Obviously, you don't want a tiny one. You don't want to blow through the oil pan. Something that's large and distributes the weight evenly is going to be the way to go. So with that, we're going to lower the car down and show you exactly what we're going to be removing from the engine bay, what engine mount we're going to be getting out of the way so that we can drop this down to remove the water pump. All right, just to give you a game plan of what we're going to do before us ourselves get up in the air. This one, again, is easier to do on the ground. This job is, we have this bolt right here, 2 for the mount here, and then 2 that go on the block. So those 5 are going to come out, and only when the engine's being supported, whether you're using a bar across the top, hooking it through here, or a floor jack and a piece of wood underneath. One thing we are going to take care of now is this connector here. It's just going to slide out of this metal retaining tab. Sometimes you can twist them and get them out. This one, I think, will just come straight out if we can just lift it. You just don't want the mount to hit it when we're lowering the engine. No. All right, we're just going to slide that out of the way for insurance. so it's not hitting anything as we lower the engine. Now with that, we're gonna get our engine supported, and then we'll come back up, get those 5 bolts out of the way so that we can lower everything down from underneath. We're gonna zap out our 13 first. It's the front facing one right here. Then we're gonna switch to our 216s. These are gonna be at the mount side of things. I'm gonna break them free first, and then we'll zap them off with the electric ratchet. 218s at the block. With those 218s broken free, now we can zap them out. Again, we're only doing this with the engine supported, of course. All right, with that, we should be free enough. I don't think we really need to get this out of our way, but we can start lowering the engine down so that we can get better access to our water pump. So there's a couple ways to go about getting the water pump out. There's lining up the pulley holes with the triple squares in the back so that you take everything out as one. You can use the counter hole tool, which is included in our water pump kit. I'm using these smaller studs, and basically the way you would go about using that is you would put it through the larger holes on your pulley. You can adjust it, of course, however you need. And then you would grab your 6mm hex and get the 3 water pump bolts off, like so. The other thing is putting that 6mm hex on something like an electric ratchet will allow you to just zap these out if you don't want to go with the counter hold tool. So again, a couple different ways to go about it. The other thing is, again, just going directly for the triple square bolts. Just whatever route you decide to go, be sure you tackle the vacuum line up top before pulling that off. To show you a better view of what that vacuum line looks like, we're gonna pull the pulley off, even though, again, you can just access the 3 bolts here if it's not your first rodeo. For those of you that want a better view, we'll pull the pulley off first and then show you that vacuum line before we pull it all out. With that off, our job is now going to be to just pull that little vacuum line off. Sometimes these can be stuck on there just due to crud, but in this case, ours just comes up nicely. And it's just a short piece. Should it be dry rotted or something, you can swap it out. It just loops right into the solenoid underneath. All right, we have 3 M6 triple squares to get out. Just be sure that they're seated all the way in before you go to remove them. You don't want to strip these out. All right, and now we're gonna grab our 17-inch pry bar to pop our pump off. There's a spot here between the block and the pump. All right, we're gonna take a moment, clean up the coolant on the ground, clean up the block. We'll clean up our surface a little bit, maybe use a Scotch-Brite pad or something. We're not trying to remove any material, just trying to leave a nice clean sealing surface. And then we'll pick it up with our new pump going in. All right, we're gonna feed in our new pump. We have our area cleaned up. I took the pulley off of this one as well, just so that we can line up our bolt holes a little bit easier. I'm not saying that it can't be done with it in place, but that is nice and snug. It went in super easy, not too easy, so that's great. The O-ring's gonna do all the sealing for us. We'll grab the 3 M6 triple squares and get those in. We're gonna torque these 3 M6 down to 8 Newton meters. If you don't have a torque wrench, just snug them up gently. It's not a whole lot of force on these. With that done, we're gonna hook up our vacuum line. And then now that that's secured, I'm just gonna brake clean everything off. I'll mark my bolts just to show that we torqued them down, and then we'll get our pulley back on. Again, we have a new one with our kit, a nice freshy baby. And then the pump, since it comes pre-assembled, already has new 6mm hex bolts, but for some reason you don't have them, the kit also includes them on their own. They're fairly inexpensive and just better to have than to not have at all. And the torque spec for these 6mm hex is 20 Newton meters. All right, with that situated, while we have it here in our teeth, let's go ahead and throw our new belt on, and then we'll get the engine back in place. Go over our tensioner pulley up top, go under our water pump, over our crank pulley. This is gonna go underneath our AC compressor and our idler. So we're gonna take our 16mm wrench one more time, Get that baby on there. Release the Kraken. Around the tensioner, under the water pump, around the outside of the crank pulley, around the outside of the bottom roller, around the outside of the AC compressor, up over the alternator and down around the roller. Okay, with that, we're back in business. All we have left to do is to get the engine back in place. Then we'll fill it with coolant. All right, now we're gonna switch to the 16s. Get those snugged up a bit. These 18s are gonna get snugged down to 60 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. Now we'll switch over to our 16, and those get torqued to 40 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. Then all we have left is our 13, and that one gets torqued down to 20 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. At this point, everything is buttoned up underneath the hood with the exception of filling it up with coolant, of course. We'll get to that in just a moment, but for now, we're gonna get our wheel liner back in place, and then we'll get our wheel back on. That way the car is ready to go back on all fours. And then we'll finish it up with the coolant mix. All right, we're just gonna position our underliner back in place. Right, and while we have it at a good eye level, let's get our wheel just back in place now. Let's get it up the rest of the way. Let's get the bottom T25s and the skid plate on, and then we'll drop her down, torque that up, pour some coolant in it. I'm gonna start by lining up the tabs up front to make sure they all go in their respective slot up front. I'm gonna torque our wheels to 140 Newton meters. All right, with that, let's put some coolant in this baby. Now it's time to fill up our cooling system. Again, we're gonna be using the U-View vacuum fill tool. We have our shop air hooked up. If you haven't seen us use this before on the channel, it's super simple. Each one of these vacuum tools works a little bit differently, but the goal is the same, to pull the vacuum out of the system so that it can replace the lack of air with coolant. Usually I go up until about the 25 on the gauge. Sorry, it's upside down. Some cars you can get there super easily. Some cars, I don't know what it is, but they may never reach 25. Give it a couple minutes. If you want to try to pull that last bit of vacuum, let it sit and then go back. Obviously, if the gauge is going and then drops, that means you have a leak in the system somewhere. So whether you pinched a seal or you didn't tighten something all the way down, this is gonna tell you if you have that leak. Obviously, worst case scenario, you can almost use this as a tester. If you suspect a bad head gasket or something similar, it won't hold pressure. So we're gonna make sure our valve is closed, set that into the top of our expansion tank. And then I like to use a little bit of shop towel around the breather where it's gonna be pulling the air out of. Sometimes there can be a little bit of coolant left in the system and it kind of aerates it, so you don't wanna have coolant mist everywhere. We're gonna go ahead and pull vacuum now. Just pressing on the button. So this one got to 25, no problem. Actually went just a little bit past it, which is totally fine. When you're using one of these tools, it's totally normal to see the coolant lines collapse. I'm gonna let this sit here for about a minute or two, even though it's holding instantly. I know we're gonna be fine. It's not a bad idea to do so. And then we'll show you how to open up the valve and fill it up. All right, at this point, the most important step is making sure that the end of your tool is always fully submerged in your coolant mix. If you let this up at any point while it's filling, it's gonna introduce air, making this whole thing null, and you're gonna have to drain and start all over again. So we're gonna make sure that is down, submerged the entire time we're doing this. Second set of hands is not a bad idea. What I like to do, and it's a little bit overkill, is I'll open up the valve, let the line fill with air, and then pull vacuum again for another second, just to kind of make up for what was in the line. And then we'll just open the valve and let it run until it's done. We'll do a little prime here. I'm gonna pull vacuum for a sec. All right. And now I'm gonna make sure this is fully submerged. We're just gonna open it. Keep an eye on your level, of course. Make sure you don't run out of coolant. If always, just make a little bit more. But for here, we just have the 1 coolant of ZRX concentrate and 1 gallon of distilled water. Oftentimes, the tool will leave the level perfect on your expansion tank. Sometimes it may be a little bit over, sometimes it may be a little bit under. As long as it's in a safe zone, if you will, I recommend run the car through a full heat cycle, let it get fully warm, let it fully cool down, and then adjust your level as needed then. At this point, our vehicle is done taking coolant, which means, my good people, that we're going to throw a cap on here, go for a test drive, and conclude this water pump DIY. Overall, a really straightforward and doable process, and one that's unfortunately going to be a very common maintenance item on these 6-cylinder Atlases. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you'd like to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. And on the flip side, if you head over to the FCPO Media channel and subscribe there, we're going to be doing a full build on this Atlas. We have some really cool things coming for it, so be sure to check that out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next one.